morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the take on this Tuesday morning. I got to tell you something. When you look back to yesterday and you get an opportunity to look at a market that started off strong and then fizzled, that's exactly what we had. As a matter of fact, you look at the Dow, we were up well over 100 points early in the session, at least in the pre. And then we just by about midday started to sell off. That accelerated to the downside. We actually had to have some pretty major buying towards the latter part of the day, up about 50 points. Still finished in the red, still finished down about 12 points. The NASDAQ, a little bit different. It really wasn't performing early on. It got smacked fairly hard as we got deeper into the day. It took a sharp turn to the downside. It was down about 70 points or so. Did rally, however, but still finished in the red as well. Both the NASDAQ and the Dow finishing very small losses, but still nonetheless, a little bit of pressure on the markets yesterday, a little bit of pressure. I don't think you want to overstate that at all by any stretch. Now we look over at crude. Crude spent a lot of the day underneath 80 in the 79s, but started to rally. And as that flipped around, obviously the energy stocks followed along in suit as well. So a nice big flip. Matter of fact, finished the day with crude trading just underneath 81, just in the upper 80, 80, 90, somewhere right in that area. So you look over at the 10-year though, planted 161. We've been talking about that time and time again. Volatility really keeps kind of getting depressed a little bit more. We're right around 17, but actually closed right around 16 and a half yesterday. And by the way, some great volumes, even with this lower volatility, and maybe that's part of the acceleration of what we're seeing as far as some of these volumes, because it's lower volatility, less expensive options, implied volatilities out there. 40.7 million contracts, again, over that 40 million mark. Pretty impressive start for the week. We'll see if we can continue. Feels a little bit lighter today, to be honest with you. Tesla, 1.7 million contracts yesterday, and Apple, 1 million contracts. They were your only 1 million contract members from yesterday's trade. Now, I mentioned energy. It did make that flip, finished just under about 1% to the upside. Materials were off throughout a lot of the session, down about 0.5%. Some of the major movers that we had yesterday, Dollar Tree, we had this activist in there. That was a stock that actually jumped up 7-8% early and actually finished the day up about 14%. Boeing, with some positives going on finally in the backdrop for Boeing. It's been moving up a little bit on a steady path, and that was up about 5% yesterday. We also had Las Vegas Sands and Wynn, some conversations out there about what's going on in the gambling industry. They were both up about 4%. You had Zoom up about 3%. What wasn't up, I brought this up yesterday in the pre-markets, but we were talking about Splunk, and that name was absolutely getting hammered yesterday. That was down over 18% yesterday, along with CrowdStrike, which was down about 10% yesterday on a bit of a downgrade, and a little bit of pressure on some of those Chinese names yesterday as well. So as we get into today, the market's kind of quiet early on, waiting to see some of these numbers, got those numbers, the retail sales numbers. That was a positive. We heard from Home Depot and Walmart. That was a positive. However, the reaction with Walmart's a little bit different. Matter of fact, under a little bit of pressure, been underwater after a flip to the upside and then started to pull back. We'll get into a little bit more of that in just a second. So we started off the day up maybe 50, 60 points in the Dow, and then just completely started to continuously accelerate up triple digits. Before you know it, up about 150, 170 points to the upside. A lot less production is what we're seeing out of the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ started the day, give or take, call it flat. It was down early, started to move a little bit into positive territory. It was up 40 points or more, but last I looked, it was up about 20 points. So we'll see how that plays out today as well. Oil, just kind of crude, just sort of holding somewhere near that 80 level. In the 10-year, of course, 1.6. We know that. We don't even have to hardly look. Volatility, we were up close towards 17 and then pulled right back again, down towards that 16.5 level once again. Bitcoin under some serious pressure. That's back down towards that 61,000 level. That's been bouncing around a little bit, showing a little bit more volatility than we had been seeing in Bitcoin, at least over the last couple of sessions. So we start off the day sector-wise. Consumer discretions were strong. They continue to be strong. They're the leader right now, and that's up about 1%. Energy, not a whole lot of movement. Matter of fact, healthcare is another one that actually did move and has a nice, decent move to the upside. So we're seeing a little bit of a push there, as that's actually been one of the sectors of late that's had a little bit of pressure on it. Technology just not doing a whole heck of a lot. Semiconductors just not doing a whole heck of a lot. That's why we're seeing the NASDAQ relatively unchanged so far. So some of the big movers on the day. Well, Rivian is one of those names, although it's pulled back, but that's a stock that started to catapult to the upside. They did start to list options. Options are there, and I will tell you, implied volatility of those options is just absolutely in the stratosphere. Not that it shouldn't be, probably well deserved based upon the stock being priced at 78, trading at 100, and then today getting up towards 170. That's a pretty volatile stock. So the implied volatilities there are anywhere between the upper 100 area and actually over 200 for some of the implied volatility, especially when you're looking at some of the shorter term. HD, those numbers were great. That stock responded very nicely. Home Depot up about 4%, dragging along with it. You've got Lowe's. Peloton with a little bit of a lift after getting hit and hit and hit and hit. Peloton up about 4.5%, a little bit of a flip. Some of these Chinese names. Yesterday, a little bit of pressure. Today, a little bit of movement to the upside. Actually, some of the leaders to the upside, along with Tesla, that's been very volatile. It's actually been in the red and then flips and then starts to move to the upside. Today is a great example of that. I think early on, I saw where it was down about 1%. And last I looked, I think Tesla was up maybe close to 3.5%. We did have a monstrous buyer in there yesterday, buying the 1,000 strike calls and selling the 1,100 strike calls going out to December 23rd. That was a pretty big trade yesterday. About 7,500 of those were trading. So that's just a great big call spread. We do have a little bit of pressure on some of the cruise lines. We do have a little bit of pressure on the airlines as well. You look over at United and Southwest and American, all with a little bit of pressure. Norwegian and Carnival, some pressure as far as the cruise ships as well. Walmart, talk about this one. The numbers look pretty good. It looked like they gave a pretty nice report. Stock just kind of flipped around, and last I looked, it was down about 2%. Nothing huge, but a little bit of pressure. Live Nation with some pressure once again. We all know that story. And I will tell you this, the trade desk, that's been on us for unusual option activity quite a few times recently when we hear from what we're doing each and every morning. And I'll tell you what, TTD, more activity today, even more activity today. They just keep kind of rolling in that active, but that's not the unusual I'm going to give you. Peloton is where I'm starting off. Now, that stock was actually all the way up towards 51. It's pulled back a little bit. Ironically, they're buying the November 50 strike calls. I think we've slipped back below 50 at this point in time. 9,300 of those calls were being purchased anywhere between $1 and $1.90. Those are probably cheaper now with the stock on a little bit of a pullback. But looking maybe for Peloton to finally get a little bit of a positive movement day. It's been under pressure ever since earnings. Intel's my second one. Intel trading just above 51, had 18,400. That's a pretty nice size trade of the December 3rd, 52.5 calls. So they're the 52.5 calls. They expire December 3rd, so it does give you multiple weeks. Those options are about 50 cents up to, or 40 cents up to about 52 cents. So seeing a little bit of activity there as well. Always interesting to see where we're seeing some of that size activity sort of step in. Intel definitely stuck out today. That's a pretty decent sized trade. The dollar amount, not as much, but when you look at the number of contracts, that's pretty big. Folks, have a great day of trading. I'll see you tonight on Fast Money at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Giddy up, CNBC.